What would you say Mr. Jones' position in the 6 Block gang was at the time of his death?
So the criminal gang 6 Block is a hybrid gang where there's really no hierarchy, there's no real leader, but Mr. Jones was a prominent member of it with a lot of say in what goes on. He also funded a lot of things that the criminal gang 6 Block has done.
Was he one of the more successful by way of his music career members of that group?
I would say so, yes, ma'am.
When you say funded, do you mean financially, like provided finances to other members?
Yes, potentially. Just he had more money than some of the other members may have.
Are you able to say whether there was a prominent member of ATK at the time of Charles Jones's death?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you identify who that person was?
The prominent member of ATK, which also they're a hybrid gang, so they wouldn't have an exact leader, but the main artist and leader or person who has the most say in that group would be a man by the name of Kenyatta Bullard. He goes by the street name of a rapper name of Young and Ace.
You shot straight, but you shot late. Hi, Lim. This is the Rundown Podcast.
I'm gonna give you the rundown.
Say, man, hey, man, it's OG Jucario. Now I'm back at you with another one. And in this episode, this segment right here, they're going to go through all the evidence that the state has with this gang expert that's going to go into great detail about both of the gangs. They're saying Young and Ace is the leader of ATK, and he says he specializes in both of these gangs, right? And they're saying Foolio is was the leader of the 6 Block gang, right? Where all these shootings and murders happen between each of these gangs and the subsets also of each gang and their involvement. And the subsets would be with ATK, they had 1200 gang as a subset, and also NHG, No Hospital Gang. These would be subsets of the ATK faction. And they're also going to go into great detail about the subsets of Foolio's gang, the 6 Block gang. They're saying that Foolio also had subsets with his gang, okay? And also before 6 Block was known as 6 Block, they're saying it was called KTA. So that would have been another subset as well. Okay, so this gang expert is going to testify, and he's going to take us down through there, you guys. They're going to start at the beginning. So they're basically saying this is why Foolio is dead, because of the beef, the dissing the dead that both of these gangs would, do to each other through the music. All right, the deceased ones of the gangs would be greatly disrespected through lyrics, and they're going to bring up lyrics. The gang expert is going to use lyrics, okay, from the Who I Smoke to When I See You on down to Game Over from Young and Ace. And this is placing Young and Ace right in the middle of the Foolio murder trial, right? Because they're using all this information from both gangs, right? Both diss wars, right? Within the music to lay out their whole case for the state, you guys, against these suspects that are accused and had been alleged to have killed Foolio. This gang expert is also going to testify to, from the very beginning where, the Who I Smoke video, that song there, the lyrics of that are tying back to people who were killed, right? From 6 Block, right? And they're saying that this is where ATK and Young and Ace and his crew bragged about killing members of 6 Block, Foolio's gang, you guys, and, subsets of the 6 Block gang, okay? So with that being said, they're going to come back and let us know how Foolio came back with his diss song, When I See You, right? And then Foolio's going to name deceased and disrespect dead ops, as they call them, dead enemies of the ATK and factions and subsets of that group, okay? So, then they're going to end it with the Game Over, okay? A video that recently Young and Ace put out. And as the song, the lyrics are saying, game over. This is a done deal now. Foolio is now dead at this point, and Young and Ace has this song out called Game Over, and they're going to use those lyrics as well by saying, 5 in the morning, got a call, who is this? Dead on arrival, Mr. 6, referring to Foolio, okay? So with all this being said, in this court hearing, right? There's evidence that these gang experts and detectives and the state is laying out for the court. It's not looking good at all for Youngin Ace and ATK, right? Or any subsets of ATK. The gang expert will also testify that Foolio made this diss song after ATK members, right? Youngin Ace's brother and friends, and also Youngin Ace was targeted in the shooting as well, coming from that town hall center at that birthday party that they had for 23, that dinner, right? Leaving that plaza is when, Youngin Ace and his crew, right, were shot up, and 3 of those guys died, okay? And the gang expert will testify that when Foolio made that diss song about this incident that occurred, this ongoing gang war kept, spiraling out of control, and more people kept losing their lives. Okay, so, with them bringing all this up, this lets us know that basically the state is saying, hey, it's because of these diss songs, these lyrics, right? These actions that both gangs had against each other, right? The stance that they took against each other is why we're here today, and the reason why Charles Jones, known as rapper Foolio, was targeted out there in Tampa, okay? And a lot of the guys who lost their life from the ATK and 1200 factions, okay? They're saying that, Foolio dissed a lot of these guys. He disrespected a lot of these members of these gangs and subsets, all right? And also, this is what they believe led to ATK and these subsets taking Foolio's life, okay, and tracking him down until they finally, got rid of him, okay? And this is where Youngin Ace is starting to brag with the song Game Over, right? Basically saying that it is now ended because Foolio is now dead. So the state is also going to lay out instances where this gang expert is going to testify to where, it was retaliatory or incidents, and also where an incident where Foolio could have lost his life out in Houston, Texas, where he was targeted, okay? And they're also using lyrics to back that up as well, saying that some of the members of the ATK and 1200 faction, okay, they bragged about this hit that Foolio was supposed to die in when he was in Texas, but he survived that shooting. Now, this gang expert is going to be thoroughly questioned and cross-examined by the defense, okay? And the prosecutor is going to let it be known that this gang expert has been working, directly with knowledge about both gangs, okay, ATK and 6 Block, and the subsets of each gang, and the members that are alleged to be gang members of each one of these gangs, the factions that they have on this sheet. And, with Ace's top killers being the rumor that is being used as, why they call ATK that in the first place, they can't confirm that, but the detective is going to say, hey, well, this, is what they're saying according to the information that they have gathered, right, from different people. So in this segment, we're going to hear the testimony of what this gang detective, right, knows about the ATK and the 6 Block and KTA and all these gangs and subsets, and what all this stuff means, and where all the beef started and how it ended, right, with Charles Jones, better yet known as the rapper Foolio, losing his life. Now, as the state is laying out all this evidence against Davion Murphy and the other suspects in the Foolio murder trial, okay, they're going to talk about tattoos and, the gang tattoos specifically that Davion has, that's, relevant to him being part of the 1200 gang, 187 and things of that nature, okay, and how the 1200 gang is connected to the ATK gang, okay. And with all this information that they have put forward, it's definitely looking like they're using all this as the basis as to why, Foolio ended up losing his life out there in Tampa. Now, with Youngin Ace's name coming up as the leader of the ATK gang there that's involved in this whole ordeal, right? They're never, actually verifying that Youngin Ace is one of the suspects, and they never said he was a suspect in the Foolio murder at all. But by this court hearing, okay, all this evidence that the state is putting forth, okay, they're constantly naming Youngin Ace and his crew, okay, that's involved in the Foolio murder. But they never once said that Youngin Ace was involved at all. So, you know, people are talking about a RICO. It could be a state RICO. We haven't definitely heard nothing about a federal RICO at this point. So we shall see if this whole ordeal turns into a superseding indictment, where the feds can come in, okay, and RICO this whole ordeal. So y'all, get in the comment section. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this entire ordeal, because this is a lengthy court hearing, okay? This is going to be a lengthy episode here, but y'all let me know what y'all think about it in the end.
Judge, if I might, we've got some brief procedural matters to resolve as soon as Mr. Murphy gets out.
Yes, Mr. Murphy's present.
Dick Sonardi for the record, Your Honor. My office was contacted on January 10th about conflict representation of Mr. Davion Murphy, and we initiated our representation at that time. My understanding is the public defender obviously has moved to withdraw, and I believe is there a representative from regional counsel also has a conflict and will be withdrawing. I formally need to be appointed, but I want it non-pro-tunc to January 10th because we've actually put in about 8 or 10 hours.
Sure.
To hear.
And regional has a conflict, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I will appoint you, Mr. Snarty, and that will be non-pro-tunc to January 10th.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
We're ready to
all right.
proceed.
Thanks, you're free to go. All right. All right, and State, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, who's going to be your first witness?
Detective Richard Meter.
Right as we start. Judge, I don't want to interrupt. I realize the court procedure, Mr. Murphy is sitting out of my, I don't want to be shouting at him. If I have questions, I can. Can he sit between the two attorneys?
I don't think that that's how they set it up as far as how the sheriff's office likes it. Can you all switch seats?
Maybe I can do that after I.
And you can turn off, there is a microphone in front of Mr. Murphy. Let's just deactivate the microphone, and then that way you can speak with him confidentially.
It's up.
Okay.
Judge, you turn both of them off.
Are we sure?
We need this one on at the end.
The one in front of defense counsel needs to be turned on. The one in front of the defendant needs to be turned off. Okay, very good. Okay, now you may proceed, Mrs. Murphy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Would you state and spell your name for the court reporter?
Detective Richard Niedertz, R-I-C-H-A-R-D, and last name is Nieder, N-E-A-D-E-R.
How are you currently employed?
I'm employed by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
And in what capacity?
I'm a detective for the Sheriff's Office.
Are you assigned to any specialized unit?
Yes, ma'am, I'm currently assigned to the gang unit.
How long have you been with the gang unit?
Approximately 2.5 years.
And how long have you worked for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Approximately 8.5 years.
What are some of the duties, if you would tell us, that you have in the gang unit?
Duties of the gang unit, we document and undocumented gangs and the members and associates of those criminal gangs. We monitor social media throughout our investigations and other various activities that the gangs do.
Having been assigned to the gang unit, do you have any specialized training in doing the documenting or undocumenting of the members?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that training?
We've taken the Florida Gang Conference classes. We've taken HIDA gang classes that are given on by the different agencies.
And are you assigned to investigate a particular gang or affiliates in Jacksonville for the particular unit you're on?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that gang?
I'm assigned the criminal gang ATK.
Despite that specific assignment, do you work with other officers within your agency and statewide on other investigations?
Yes, ma'am.
And in providing that assistance, do you obtain information about other gangs?
Yes, ma'am.
About the affiliations related to those gangs, meaning people that are associated with the gangs and people that are opposing those gangs?
Yes, ma'am. It
You,
would,
you indicated that you're specifically assigned to ATK.
yes, ma'am.
Is there a particular gang that has been identified as an enemy or an op of ATK?
Yes, ma'am. There is, the main one would be 6 block, and then there's subsets of 6 block.
In talking about subsets, can you identify what some of those are?
Yes, ma'am. A subset of 6 block would be We All We Got, WAWG, and Bully Gang.
And are those known associates of the gang 6 Block?
Yes, ma'am.
Would they be essentially, in plain language, on the same side?
Yes, ma'am.
How about ATK? Do they have subsets or associates?
They do. They're not classified as subsets, but NHG would be an affiliate of ATK, and along with 1200.
And do you, as a part of your duties or you're investigating these gangs, specifically as it relates to ATK, investigate members of 1200,
Yes, ma'am.
NHG?
Yes, ma'am.
Same process for 6 Block and the subsets or affiliates that you mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a part of your responsibilities to investigate the opposition to ATK, the gangs that are opposed to ATK?
Yes, ma'am, to a certain extent.
So you have knowledge about 6 Block and its members as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you also had an opportunity throughout your work with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office to investigate the crimes that have been related to these gangs?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you responded to homicide scenes, attempted murder scenes, shootings related directly to 6 Block or ATK members?
Yes, ma'am.
As a result of the investigations related to those cases, are you aware of arrests that were made and tied to a gang dispute or problem between ATK and 1200 versus 6 Block and its affiliates?
Yes, ma'am.
How is it that you are able to identify whether someone is a gang member or a gang associate?
Florida state statute.
Is there a specific statute which helps you or allows you to differentiate between the two?
Yes, ma'am. 874.
And what is the difference between an associate versus a gang member?
And the Florida state statute, an associate only needs 1 criteria, and a member needs 2 or more.
Are you familiar with or were you tasked with assisting in the investigation of the homicide of Charles Jones conducted by the Tampa Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you familiar with the defendants listed in that case?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to, throughout the course of your employment with JSO, determine whether the defendants of that particular case, to include this defendant, Davion Murphy, had associations or membership ties to a gang?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell me which defendants were identified and what the nature of their relationship to the gang would be?
Yes, ma'am. Rashad Murphy would be a member of 1200 gang. Davion Murphy would be a 1200 associate. Isaiah Chance would be an ATK member, and Sean Gathright would be an ATK associate, and Alicia Andrews is neither.
Are the documents or undocumenting that you do for the gangs recorded in some way?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you specifically look to the statute to make those identifications when you're recording it?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
What specific factors led you to the conclusion that this particular defendant was a gang associate of 1200?
Davion Murphy.
Yes.
His tattoos.
What about the tattoos or what specifics related to the tattoos for Mr. Davion Murphy are you referencing?
He has the tattoo of 1200 block on the back of his neck, along with other deceased members of 1200 tattooed throughout his body.
1200, as you've mentioned, is affiliated with ATK.
Yes, ma'am.
And were there other annotations that you were able to make over the course of the investigation from when you started investigating 1200 to today's date, which lead to your conclusion regarding Mr. Davion Murphy being a member of 1200?
I'm sorry. Can you ask that again?
Yes. Is there something other than tattoos that you were able to solidify that Davion Murphy would be a member of 1200?
Yes, ma'am. A hand sign.
Describe to me what you're talking about.
So the criminal gang 1200 has a hand sign that they do in their music videos and throughout their social media posts, and they often rep that hand sign on what would be their block or their neighborhood. Mr. Murphy has displayed that hand sign since in custody.
So you keep a chronological list, essentially, as best as possible, with the documentation that you make of each of the gang members when you record them?
Yes.
And from the time that you were investigating this particular case, did you have an opportunity to see Davion Murphy make a gang sign with his hands?
Yes.
When was that?
The night he was arrested.
Was that during the interview of Davion Murphy?
It was.
Were you present for the interview of Davion Murphy?
I was.
And did you have an opportunity to view that on a recording device of some type?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that in an interview room, or where did that happen?
It was in an interview room at the state attorney's office in Jacksonville.
Have you since had an opportunity to review that interview?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you been able to confirm the 1200 gang sign that Mr. Murphy made?
Yes.
Would that have been on January 6th of 2025?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Was there another detective that was present conducting the interview of Davion Murphy on that same date?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that detective's name?
Detective Drebeck.
Now, you previously mentioned that it is part of your responsibility to monitor social media in your job duties.
Yes, ma'am.
What types of social media?
All types, but the main three that we've seemed to found that benefit the investigation would be Facebook, Instagram, and now it's called X, but it's formerly known as Twitter.
In speaking about your involvement with the Charles Jones investigation, can you tell me, was Charles Jones a member of any particular gang?
Yes, ma'am. He was a member of the criminal gang 6 Block.
And was he known by a nickname?
Yes, his nickname would be Foolio.
Were there additional nicknames that he went by?
I believe additionally it would be like Julio Foolio or like Foolio 98 or something along those lines.
Did you have an opportunity personally in your line of work to view videos posted by Julio Foolio or Foolio under any title with any of the nicknames assigned to Charles Jones?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
What would you say Mr. Jones' position in the 6 Block gang was at the time of his death?
So the criminal gang 6 Block is a hybrid gang where there's really no hierarchy, there's no real leader, but Mr. Jones was a prominent member of it with a lot of say in what goes on. He also funded a lot of things that the criminal gang 6 Block has done.
Was he one of the more successful by way of his music career members of that group?
I would say so, yes, ma'am.
When you say funded, do you mean financially, like provided finances to other members?
Yes, potentially. Just he had more money than some of the other members may have.
Are you able to say whether there was a prominent member of ATK at the time of Charles Jones's death?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you identify who that person was?
The prominent member of ATK, which also they're a hybrid gang, so they wouldn't have an exact leader, but the main artist and leader or person who has the most say in that group would be a man by the name of Kenyatta Bullard. He goes by the street name of a rapper name of Young and Ace.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibits 1 and 2. Do you recognize these exhibits?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes.
how do you recognize them?
I've seen them before.
I'm sorry, how do you recognize it?
I've been shown them before.
Do these exhibits fairly and accurately depict relatively the gang members or associates of those gangs?
Yes, ma'am, for the most part. Obviously, that's not going to list all of the members and associates of either gang.
And is
Okay,
this,
may I have more diagram on that, Judge?
Okay.
Detective, who put together that composite of those photographs?
I'm not sure.
All right, you've just seen them in the past, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How do you know that those individuals are alleged to be members of that gang, other than what it says on the photograph?
I've investigated those. I'm not saying they're all members, but everybody on there is either a member or associate of the gang that they're listed under.
Do you know each and every one of those individuals that are shown on State's Exhibit number 1 and number 2?
I would have to look back over them again,
Okay,
sir.
that's what I'm asking. And so the record's clear, you did not compile that, correct?
I did not, no, sir.
When's the first time you saw those photographs?
At the very first hearing that we had in reference to this case.
All right. And do you know how those photographs were
Or are you gonna
compiled?
let him take a look at it or not? Because he still has to answer the first question you asked him, was if he recognizes everybody on
That's
there.
fine,
So
good.
let him come up for air.
There are some people on both of these lists that do not know, I do not recognize. But to answer your last question, I did not make these.
All right, so the individuals that are on there that you do not recognize, do you know whether or not they are in fact a member of either one of those two groups?
Based on my investigation into the criminal gang ATK, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. We're going to object to the admissibility of the gang photograph.
Well, okay, I'm gonna overrule. He can identify the individuals that he does recognize, and he can explain how he recognized them and what their purported affiliation or membership is, okay? So overrule the objection,
I'll seek to admit it this time, Your Honor.
okay? Admitted with that qualification.
Ensuing use states Exhibit 1. Do you have an opportunity, can you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you also see the names under the photos themselves?
Yes, ma'am.
In talking about States Exhibit 1, what are we looking at here?
It is a chart of 6 block, Fontaine, and Y&R.
Have you had an opportunity to look at the names of the individuals depicted?
I have.
To be fair, are some of the individuals depicted here incarcerated or deceased?
They are.
More specifically, I'll ask you about the photo on the top left of this Exhibit 1 labeled Foolio. Do you recognize that individual?
Yes, ma'am. That would be Charles Jones.
Is that the Charles Jones that we have discussed already?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you also identify any of the other individuals depicted on States Exhibit 1, most specifically Bibby on the second row, the third photo in?
Yes, ma'am.
Who is that?
Adrian Gaynor.
Is that person deceased or living?
He is deceased.
And does his homicide become relevant in this investigation in some way?
It has.
Same question for the photo just above that, Tiki, aka T-Shots. Do you recognize that individual?
I do, but I'm not sure of his legal name. I just know him as Tiki.
Is that person, do you know whether that person is deceased or living?
I do know that he is deceased.
Was it declared a homicide?
It was.
And was his homicide in some way related to this case as well?
Yes.
Lastly, Trey D, the photograph just to the right of the image we just spoke about.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize that individual?
I do, but once again, his legal name has slipped my mind. I'm not sure of it.
Are you familiar with the nature of his death?
Yes, ma'am.
Who's the he we're referring to?
Trey D,
Okay,
the fifth photo in from the left. Are you familiar with the nature of Trey D's death?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that homicide in some way relevant to the Charles Jones homicide investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Referring you now to States Exhibit 2, can you see that all right?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that there was a prominent member of ATK. Can you remind me of the name of that individual?
Yes, ma'am. It's the second photo on the top row. It has the name Young and Ace underneath it.
Is that Mr. Bullard, as you previously referenced?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that person living or deceased?
He is living.
And are there other individuals as a part of this chart that you were able to recognize whose deaths or cases were in some way related to this particular homicide investigation?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be the ones that are right underneath the word Ace's crew. It says Quan 23 and Kobe.
Can you explain why their deaths are relevant in this particular case?
Yes, ma'am. Back in 2018 in Jacksonville, Florida, over on the city's south side in an area we call the town center, there was a triple homicide that involved Quan 23 and Kobe. There was a fourth victim of that shooting was Mr. Bullard.
Is that Young and Ace as previously mentioned?
Yes.
Was Young and Ace present at the time of the shooting or homicide of the other 3 individuals named?
Yes, he was, and they were all 4 traveling in the same vehicle.
They all 3 passed away as a result of that incident.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know what the relationship between Mr. Bullard, aka Young and Ace, and the 3 individuals you've mentioned is?
One was his brother, and the other 2 were friends.
Which individual was his brother?
I believe 23. Could have been I'm sorry, the names, like their names get all confused, but one of them was his brother. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly which one.
Do you mean their legal names, meaning their government official names?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But by nickname, those are the 3 individuals who passed away in the same vehicle that Young and Ace was traveling in.
Yes, ma'am.
Why did that case become relevant to the Foolio, aka Charles Jones homicide investigation?
They throughout both of those these homicides, they've made songs dissing each other back and forth.
Can I ask you a question? You said it was a triple homicide, but there were 4 people in the car?
Yes, ma'am.
So did one person survive?
Yes, ma'am. Young and Ace survived.
Young and Ace survived. Okay, thank you.
Is there one song in particular that's written by the decedent, in this case Charles Jones, referencing this homicide?
Yes, it is.
After that video was, or when we talk about videos or music videos, are you talking about those that were posted to YouTube specifically?
Yes, ma'am.
After that music video was posted, had there been additional videos posted?
There has.
Were there videos posted to social media between the 2 gangs before that incident even?
Yes.
How long would you say that the ongoing beef that you can at least associate to gang activity has been going on between ATK and 1200 and 6 Block?
I've been employed with the Sheriff's Office since 2016, and since I've been employed, I believe that this war has been going on, so at least since 2016 to my knowledge.
Was there an event or a time in 2020 in which the war or beef between the 2 sides ramped up or grew more frequent?
Yes, ma'am.
How did that start?
I believe with the death of Bibby.
And around what time in 2020 did your office begin investigating crimes in Jacksonville related to ATK and 6 Block? Do you know when?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Are you familiar with a social media post that was made at the gravesite of 23 aka RJ, depicted in State's Exhibit 2?
I am.
Can you tell us about that social media post?
Yes, it was members and associates of the criminal gang 6 Block. They went to the grave. He's buried in a wall, so he has like a plaque on a wall. And they gave the grave site a middle finger and shot finger guns at it.
Was that posted by 6 Block members to social media in 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
Come August of 2023, did you have the opportunity to respond to a homicide scene on the interstate?
I did.
Can you tell me the nature of that call?
That was a homicide. The victim in that case was a young man named Jaquan Pickens. Goes by the name of Jake Jit. He was a member of 6 Block or Bully Gang, and he was shot and killed on the interstate and crashed into a semi-truck.
And you actually attended that scene in person?
Yes, ma'am.
After was that August 16th of 2023?
I don't know the exact day, but I would say the fall of 2023. Yes, ma'am.
And the days after that, was there another offense related to this gang war?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it was the next day.
And what was that?
A member of 1200. He was at a football practice in Jacksonville, and he was shot during that football practice and lived.
Are you referencing the Beals attempted murder?
Yes, ma'am. It would be Jacoby Bills. He also goes by the nickname of LaBobie.
Did anyone die at that scene?
I do not believe anybody died.
But it would have been the day after Mr. Pickens'
Yes,
homicide.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
In October of 2023, did you receive an additional call out to a homicide related to an Antonio Tilley?
Yes, ma'am.
What gang is he affiliated with?
Antonio Tilley is member of the criminal gang ATK.
And what was the nature of that homicide?
That it appears that he was set up and he showed up to a house via Uber driver, and somebody came out from behind the house and shot and killed him and the Uber driver.
And was there a shooting or homicide that you investigated as a result of that shooting, meaning after that?
Yes, ma'am. Like a couple hours after.
What was that?
That one also occurred in Jacksonville. Charles Jones, also known as Foolio, was leaving his residence and where he was staying that night. And as he's driving down the street, two unknown masked men hop out of a vehicle and fire at his black Dodge Charger, striking him in the foot.
That would have also been October of 2023.
Yes, ma'am. That would have been, I want to approximately 5 to 6 hours after the death of Antonio Tilly.
Are you familiar with the ballistics that were collected in that case, the Charles Jones shooting from October of 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you familiar with the ballistics evidence that was collected in the homicide investigation related to Charles Jones in June of 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there a correlation between the casings that were collected on search warrant in the Tampa Police Department investigation that related back to the October 23 shooting, the attempted murder?
Yes, ma'am. I believe so.
So the relationship between the casings collected at the Charles Jones attempted murder in October of 2023 related back to casings collected via search warrant in the Charles Jones homicide investigation?
Yes.
As a part of your ongoing investigation of the gang war, did you have an opportunity to actually download or preserve videos from social media,
Are you asking like
from YouTube?
in like the history of me investigating them, or for this case?
Well, in the history of investigating them, have you watched YouTube videos between the two gangs?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you able to identify that it is a gang that's posting the video, or members of the gang that are posting the video?
Just off the credits on the video and the description of who it is.
Meaning in the description, is ATK posted sometimes?
I believe they often hashtag either ATK or NHG.
Are you able to also identify based on their looks or your familiarity with the gang members whether they were in the videos?
Yes.
In this particular case, did you have an opportunity to, related to 3 specific videos, review videos titled Who I Smoke, When I See You, and Game Over?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to confirm that the state's exhibits 3, 4, and 5 are those videos?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had an opportunity to review or evaluate the videos in a way that you have also listened to the lyrics or read through the transcripts from the videos to determine what was being said?
Yes, ma'am.
And are what's contained on these discs fair and accurate representations of the direct media downloads from these music videos from YouTube?
Yes, ma'am.
The state seeks to admit states 3, 4, and 5, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, admitted.
In referring you to State's Exhibit 3, do you recognize the opening of this particular video?
Yes, ma'am. This is the, it's about, when you hit play, it's going to play Who I Smoke by Young and Ace, Spin a Benz, Wappa with the Choppa, and Fast Money Goon.
I'm not going to play the entirety of the video, but I will through the portion that you've just mentioned about the identity. Are you able to, from your review of the videos, see the nicknames or aliases of anyone in particular on this Who I Smoke video?
Yes, ma'am. I see Spin a Benz, Wappa with the Choppa, Young and Ace, and Fast Money Goon.
Are they all openly affiliated to ATK?
Spin a Benz and Wappa with the Choppa are going to be 1200, and Young and Ace and Fast Money Goon will be ATK.
Why is it that two different groups or subsets are filming a video together? Can you explain that to us?
Yes, ma'am. They often, ATK and 1200 often make music videos and share each other's social media posts, and they're simply associated with each other because they both have a common enemy.
Who is their common enemy?
It would be the north side, which would be like 6 Block, We All We Got, and Bully Gang.
And the same for 6 Block, North Side, We All We Got gang members. They are affiliated with each other.
Yes, ma'am.
And do they have a common enemy?
Yes, ma'am. It would be 1200 and ATK.
So they are filming the music video together, but a part of different groups.
Yes, ma'am.
In your review of the Who I Spoke video that was posted, were there lines or lyrics that were of importance to you?
Yes, ma'am, there were.
And what was that?
So in the chorus of the song, it says, Who I Smoke Bibby, and then Who I Smoke Tiki, and Who I Smoke Lil 9. Those were just, Bibby is who one of Foolio's best friends that passed away, and Tiki and Lil 9 were just close associates.
Are they all 6 Block members or associates?
Yes.
Now, when you're saying Who I Smoke, what does that mean?
Who I Smoke basically is speaking on the dead, like you either killed them or you didn't necessarily do the killing, but you're speaking in reference to the murder of those individuals.
And was there any other lyrics that you thought were important for this particular video?
Yes, ma'am. Towards the bottom, Fast Money Goon is rapping, and he says, I don't the exact lyrics, probably have to play it, but he speaks along the lines of, I called him lacking in Texas and went live, and then he says some explicit language, and he talks about, man, he didn't die.
Was there another attempt on the life of Charles Jones that occurred outside of Florida in
Yes,
Texas?
ma'am. That would be the shooting he's talking about. I'm not sure the exact year. I want to say maybe 2022 or 2021. Charles Jones was in Texas. He was shot, and while he was in the hospital bed, he went live on his Instagram talking about himself being shot.
Do you also ultimately learn during your assist with the Tampa Police Department investigation that Spenavens or Wappa with the Choppa would be relevant to that case?
To which case?
The homicide investigation which occurred in Tampa.
I believe the relevance, I'm not sure, but they had made music videos about this homicide, yes.
In showing you State's Exhibit 4, can you see that all right?
Yes, ma'am. This is the opening clip to the song When I See You by Foolio.
Is this a song that was posted after the Who I Smoke video by Young and Ace, Wappa with the Choppa, Fast Money Goon?
Yes, ma'am. This would be the response to the song When Who I Smoke.
Would that have been posted the days or weeks after the Who I Smoke video?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure the exact time frame, but it was posted after.
What was relevant in your review of the When I See You video to your investigation of the gang?
Yes, ma'am. So throughout this entire song, he speaks about 1200 and some ATK. So just knowing the song, he says he's sliding through the 12. He doesn't see nobody outside. Sliding through the 12 would be a reference to the 1200 block, which is the area that the criminal gang 1200 operates out of. And then he also talks about 2-3, which was killed in the town center shooting with Young and Ace. And then he talks about Papa, Lil Papa, who is a prominent member of 1200, or not a member, a prominent associate. He's like he's a successful rapper out of the criminal gang 1200. Just throughout the whole thing, he talks about different 1200 and ATK guys. Take a bike like I'm Suge. Suge was a 1200 guy who was killed. Catch a face shot like 5, and then Roland Michi in the wood. Those were two prominent 1200 guys that were shot and killed in Orlando.
When you are saying on any of these videos that they are talking about the opposing gang, is there a negative connotation to what's being said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you say talking about, they're not just mentioning them or giving them a shout out of some kind. I mean,
No, ma'am. It would be disrespecting them.
Is that the nature of these so-called drill raps?
Yes, ma'am. It would be.
Can you talk to me about the importance of the props that were utilized in Foolio, aka Charles Jones music video.
Yes, ma'am. So that, so the happy birthday part, they were there celebrating, I believe, 23's birthday. They were eating wasabi at the restaurant at our town center.
When you're saying they, are you talking about Quan, 23, and 4 as previously identified in our chart?
And Young and Ace, yes, ma'am.
And you're talking about the triple homicide.
Yes, ma'am. So they were eating, they just got done eating their birthday dinner at the town center, and as they go to leave is when they were shot and killed. This is on the poster board you see there is Quan 23 and 4 from the Action News Jax channel in Jacksonville, and he's got the birthday cake around him because they were killed leaving the birthday celebration.
Does Charles Jones utilize this poster throughout the duration of his music video posted here?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you able to identify whether this is a separate cemetery than the post originally made earlier in 2023, which kind of set things off?
Yes, ma'am. I am not sure which where this cemetery is or what graves he is at.
Okay, so you can't say whether or not this was the same 23 grave that they went to and pointed to.
Right, I cannot say that.
The identifiers that you use, though, are the news release that was blown up on the poster that's depicted on the video clip we're looking at in State's Exhibit 4.
Yes, ma'am.
Those are the 3 individuals that were deceased.
Yes, ma'am.
In looking at State's Exhibit number 5, so over the course of 2023 and into 2024, are you still monitoring the gang activity between the 2 groups?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you ultimately notified that Charles Jones is deceased in June, of 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the Tampa Police Department investigation that we have been referencing?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you, despite his death, continue investigating the ongoing music videos that are being posted?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there a music video posted shortly after Charles Jones's death?
Yes, ma'am.
And who posted that video?
Young and Ace.
What was his name, Mr. Bullard?
Kenyatta Bullard, yes.
And the video itself, why was it relevant to your explanation regarding the dispute between the 2 groups?
It was this song, and it was the name of the song was Game Over.
The lyrics that were provided in the video, why were they relevant to the Tampa Police Department investigation?
There's a lot of lines in here that reference it. In the beginning he says, "I smoke 6." He's referencing 6 as in 6 block for Charles Jones. He says explicit language to the 6. And then he says 4 in the car, 1 of them dead, 3 got hit. He's talking about the shooting, the 4 in the car. The dead one is obviously Mr. Jones, and I believe there were a couple other people that were struck in that shooting.
Can I specify? You said he's talking about the shooting. Are you talking about the homicide scene with Charles Jones?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so the notes that you're annotating now, you're talking about him speaking specifically about the facts of what occurred in June of 2023,
Yes,
24.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So he talks about the members or numbers of individuals in the car.
Yes, ma'am. And then it's not on here, but if you play it, he will say, "Oh, it does. It is on here. I'm sorry. It says 5 in the morning. I got a call. What is this?" And it's dead on the floor, dead on arrival, Mr. 6. If I recall correctly, we were notified roughly around 4:30, 5 a.m. I'm not sure when the exact homicide occurred, but Jacksonville itself was notified roughly around that time about the death of Mr. Jones. And then he talks about they don't want a war. He's speaking on the violent crimes that have happened back and forth. A little further down, he talks about bullets through his windshield, can't miss him with that chopper. Chop. Basically, a chopper is a long gun. It could be referenced as an AR or an AK. In the surveillance footage that I've observed of this homicide, bullets went through the windshield, and 2 of the suspects did have long guns. He also talks about anybody who went to that grave and took a picture, they got hit. That one's talking about the grave picture we referenced earlier, where 6 Block and other members and associates have pulled up to 23's grave and shot finger guns and middle fingers at the gravesite.
Now, indicating that the individuals who went to the grave got hit, were you able to tell from that social media post at 23's gravesite, from the members that were either tagged or identifiable to you, how many of those individuals have since died?
Well, I know for a fact that Charles Jones was there. You can see his hand. A young man by the name of Larino Span. He goes by the name of Lacraca. He has been shot multiple times since that. His hand was there. You don't see any faces, but you can make out tattoos and stuff of these guys. And another guy by the name of, I think it's Julian House. He goes by the name of Rico Osama. He was shot and killed, I believe, in December of 2023, if I'm not mistaken. You can just tell, like I said, by the tattoos on them of who they are. But I can't, other than who was tagged, I can't say this for sure. Then they could just be getting tagged in the post.
And you can't, meaning you can't identify the arm to the tag.
Correct.
When you had an opportunity to view this game over video in full, were there references to having Don Julio and on their head? Did you hear those references?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us what that means?
So after, throughout my investigation of ATK, I've not seen Don Julio or this tequila be used or as a prop or anything until after the death of Charles Jones. But since the death of Charles Jones, I've seen 1200 and ATK guys posting with a bottle of Don Julio tequila, and that's referencing the nickname of Julio Foolio.
What does it mean to say there's a bag on your head in gang investigations?
So just off of my training and experience, a bag on your head would mean that somebody has placed money for you to become unalived. Just an example would be like if somebody puts $5,000, no matter who carries it out, that murder or that killing, that person is to get paid their money.
These are not the sole or only videos that were posted directly after this offense, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that would be correct.
And you previously mentioned that you were at least present at the interview for Davion Murphy in Jacksonville.
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Did Detective Drabick lead the questioning of that interview?
He did.
Did you have an opportunity at the conclusion of that interview to photograph Davion Murphy?
I did.
And was there anything of note that you were able to depict from those photographs?
Yes, ma'am. There were several tattoos that raised interest. The one on the back of his neck, like I said earlier, it says 1200 block. He also has rest up Avery McKnight on his neck. He has 187 on his arm. He has Corbin J across his neck, and he has Joe Rod Adams on his arm.
Okay, so if I can break that down a little bit, you said he has 1200 and 187. Are those associates?
Yes, ma'am. So oftentimes throughout the gang, they use they use numbers or other meanings to show representation. So not only is the 1200 mean the 1200 block, 187 would also reference 1200.
And were you able to utilize those tattoos in your assessment of the defendant, Davion Murphy's gang affiliation as far as an association or gang member?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to date those tattoos?
I personally was not. I believe we asked Mr. Murphy in his interview about him, and he said that he got them either before he was locked up or while he was locked up.
Was Mr. Murphy incarcerated and ultimately released prior to the homicide of Charles Jones?
Yes.
What is the reference to Corbin J and the significance of that tattoo?
So Corbin, it's Corbin Johnson. He was a 1200. I'm not real sure of his member and associate status, but we'll call him an associate. He was a part of the criminal gang 1200, and he ultimately went missing. He's been missing for about a year, and a random citizen found his bones and I believe bags while he was cutting grass or something. But throughout this entire war of music back and forth, they reference how does a grown man go missing, and they talk about Corbin being missing.
Does Charles Jones make specific references in his music videos to Corbin Johnson?
He does.
You mentioned an Avery McKnight tattoo. Does that person have an alias?
I believe that is Suge.
And were there 2 tattoos in honor of Suge that you documented?
Yes, I believe that is correct. I believe he has the word Suge on his hand, and he's got Avery McKnight on his neck.
And throughout your review of the music videos posted, was Suge or Avery McKnight referenced
Yes,
by Charles Jones in those music videos?
yes,
Was the nature in which he was killed also referenced in those music videos?
yes.
And lastly, the Gerard Adams
Yes.
tattoo?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the relevance of Gerard Adams?
I believe Gerard is Mr. Murphy's cousin. He goes by the nickname of Spaz.
Was Spaz killed in relation to the gang violence between the 2 groups?
Yes, ma'am. Spaz was killed at or Gerard was killed at a football game at a local high school in Jacksonville. It's Rains High School. It's in the middle of what would be 6 block territory.
Are you familiar with that homicide investigation?
Yes, ma'am. They made Jacksonville Sheriff's Office made an arrest on that case. The suspect in that case was Robert Howard.
And was Mr. Howard ultimately convicted in relation to that case?
Yes, ma'am. I believe he was.
Are you familiar with the witnesses that have been listed in the Tampa Police Department homicide for Charles Jones?
I am.
Was Robert Howard present with Charles Jones at the time of his murder?
He was.
Your Honor, may I have one moment?
Yep.
We'll pass the witness room.
Okay, Cross?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Detective.
How are you?
Fine, sir. I don't believe we have met. I guess we can start on the, kind of go, well, let's, you've been a detective with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for approximately 8.5 years, is that correct?
No, sir. I started my career in patrol, where I was just a normal patrol officer, and then I moved on to a detective. Yes, sir.
And you've been a member of the gang unit for approximately 2.5 years, is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
And do you have specific gangs that I understand you to say you have? Let's withdraw that. How many detectives are assigned to gangs with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir. We have 12 detectives and 2 sergeants on our unit.
And is each detective assigned to a particular gang?
Yes, sir.
All right, and your gangs were, when you were originally assigned, were whom?
I have ATK, NHG, and another gang in Jacksonville called 300.
All right, and do you know, the AZK, do you know if that stands for anything?
ATK. I haven't been able to prove it, but the rumor the rumor that goes around, it stands for Ace's Top Killers.
I'm sorry,
Ace's Top Killers.
ACES?
Ace.
Now, did you do any direct investigation into the 1200 gang?
I have not, no, sir.
All right. Are you familiar, apparently there was some photos of individuals that you were asked to identify originally. I believe it was State's Exhibit either number 1 or number 2. One of those included alleged members of the 1200 gang, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you recall whether or not Davion Murphy was in any of those photographs?
I do not believe he was.
Okay. All right, so whenever that was compiled, the gang members in that you recognized Mr. Davion Murphy was not one of the gang members, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Now, if you would, clarify your understanding of the difference between an associate member of a gang and a gang member.
Yes, sir. Per the state statutes, an associate needs to meet 1 criteria laid out within that state statute, and a member has to meet 2 or more.
All right. And do you know what that criteria is pursuant to the Florida statute? I believe it's 874.
I personally cannot name all of them because there is a lot of them, but I can name a few. Yes, sir.
All right. Did you have any involvement in investigating any of the criteria to determine whether or not Davion Murphy met that criteria?
I have not. I did not. He's not a documented member at this time. based on what I've seen within our unit, I believe he's a documented associate that I did not do.
Okay. So he's clearly not a documented member, but you believe he may be an associate based on what you...
He is. We have documented him as an associate to the criminal gang 1200. He is. We are still working on the member status for him. Yes, sir.
And do you know, if you know, when it was that he was alleged to be an associate? What time frame are we talking about?
I believe it would have been late last year at some time. By late, it could, sometime between the fall and winter months of last year.
All right, so would that be, you're aware of the date of the alleged, the homicide here in Hillsborough County, correct?
Yes, sir. He was documented as an associate after the homicide.
After the homicide, okay.
Correct.
All right. So is there any evidence to indicate that he was in fact a member prior to June 23rd of 2024?
Based on the interview that we had with him and the tattoos that he has on his body, I believe that if we had known about those tattoos before the homicide, he could have been he could be documented as a member of a criminal gang 1200.
Before June 23rd of 24?
Yes, sir. Because based on what Mr. Murphy has told me and Detective.
So let's make it clear. You're talking about Davion Murphy,
Yes,
correct?
sir. Sorry, there is two in this case. Based on what Davion Murphy has told me in the interview that we conducted earlier this month, was that he had those tattoos either before or when he got them before or when he went to prison, and he was in prison, I believe, between 2018 and 2023.
Okay. So your information concerning when he got those tattoos was allegedly pursuant to the interview you conducted, I believe, with yourself and the other detective of the interview of Mr. Murphy, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it Drayback?
Drebeck. Yes, sir.
Gray?
Dre.
D-R-A,
B-E-K.
oh, Brayback.
Dre.
Okay. Can you spell
With a
that?
D.
Yeah, D, Delta, Romeo, Alpha, Bravo, Echo, Kilo.
All right, thank you. All right. Now, you've also, and it's your understanding that the tattoos that you've described that you saw on Mr. Murphy at your interview with him in Jacksonville were what? What were they that led you to believe that they were indicative of gang membership?
He has the gang tattooed on him.
What did he have tattooed on him?
1200 block.
All right, and what leads you to believe that that tattoo is indicative of as a member of that gang? Simply because of that number?
That's the name of the gang.
I'm sorry?
That's the name of the gang.
Okay. All right. And anything else that you saw?
He had some deceased members and associates tattooed on him as well.
Okay. That were, you alleged, were members of the 1200 gang, correct?
I wouldn't say alleged. I would say they met state statutes to be members of the 1200 gang.
And the 1200 gang, as I understand it, is a location is it Duval County or in Jacksonville, the city of Jacksonville?
Jacksonville is Duval County.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
So where was this 1200, what, is that a?
Yes, sir. It's a city block. It's the 1200 block of East 1st Street. It is on the city's east side, kind of near our stadium. I don't know if you're familiar with Jacksonville, but it's the east side of downtown Jacksonville.
And during the time that you were a member of the, and are a member of the gang units, do you know where Mr. Davion Murphy resided?
I do not know his exact residence, no, sir.
So you didn't know where he lived?
No.
Okay. All right, now we saw a number, well, not a number, we saw three videos at the state, YouTube videos. Those are YouTube videos, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And one of them is State's Exhibit number 3, which is Who I Smoke. Was that one of them?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what led you to believe Who I Smoke, your interpretation of what allegedly that meant? How did you come to that conclusion?
Just based on my training and experience to speaking with these guys and listening to not just that song, but other songs.
Did you talk to anyone that actually authored the videos?
I have not. Well, I have spoken with them, but we have not talked about the video.
That's what I'm asking you. Did anyone that was participated in the video explain to you what they meant by Who I Smoke?
No, sir. It's simply my own interpretation based on the training and experience I've had within the gang unit.
And your interpretation is you believe that to be that Who I Smoke has something to do with who I kill or I'm gonna kill or involved in a homicide? Is that your?
My interpretation of the term smoke, or when you say you're rolling somebody in a wood, or like who I smoke, is there it is a disrespect towards the whoever they say that, and then the name after. It's a disrespect towards that, basically insinuating that that guy's dead because of something that my friends have done.
Again, is that as a result of your interview with anybody participating in the making of those videos, or is that again your interpretation based on your experience?
Yes, sir. Once again, that is my interpretation. I have not spoken with anybody in these videos about about those songs.
All right. Now, State's Exhibit, the video number 4, When I See You, is that the name of that video? Do you recall?
If that's the one that Foolio song, yes, sir. That would be When I See You.
And do you have an interpretation of what that's supposed to mean?
No, sir. It's based on my training and experience and the way that I interpret it through what I've learned and the training that I've received.
And what is that? What's your interpretation of what that video means?
It's a disrespect towards the people that he mentions throughout that song.
Now, do you know when that State's Exhibit number 4, When I See You, when that was authored or when that was created?
I don't know the exact time it was released or wrote or authored. I do know for a fact that it was released on YouTube after Who I Smoke.
Okay. And do you know approximately when it was that Who I Smoke was released or at least put on YouTube?
I don't know the exact time, no, sir.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you know if these were before or after June 23rd of 2024?
It would have been before.
Before.
Yes, sir.
All 3 videos that the state introduced?
No, sir. State Exhibit 5 was after
Okay.
this the case that in
All right.
question.
And that's game over?
Yes, sir.
All right. And do you have your interpretation of what game over supposedly meant?
Yes, sir.
And what is that?
Game Over is also it's speaking about the homicide of Charles Jones.
Let me stop you there. How do you know it's referencing the homicide of Charles Jones?
So in other songs based on that I've listened to, that Mr. Jones, he calls himself Mr. Six, which was a representation of his gang. And then in this song it says, "Dead on the floor, dead on arrival, Mr. Six." That would mean that to me is whenever somebody arrived to the scene that Mr. Six was dead.
And you're interpreting Mr. Six to be Charles Jones? Is that
Yes.
what you're interpreting?
Yes, sir.
Again, so we're clear. Did you interview anybody that participated in the creation of that video?
No, sir.
All right. Again, so it's clear this is all your interpretation of what allegedly that video represents, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And let me ask you to digress for a moment, if I may. What directly are you aware of pursuant to your position as a gang member, as a gang investigator with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office that led you to believe that Devion, besides the tattoos, Devion Murphy is a member of a gang, any gang?
He said associate.
I'm sorry?
He said he was an associate.
Associate, I apologize, associate.
Like I said, I did not document him as an associate, so I'd have to see that documentation.
Okay. So you're not personally aware of any of the criteria under 874 that designates Mr. Devion Murphy as a gang member, correct?
Well, now I am, yes, sir. He during the interview, he did the 1200 gang sign, and then along with his tattoos, that would be two of the that meets two criteria to document as a member of criminal gang 1200.
And the same type of questions, you say the hand signs, are those your interpretation of what those are?
No, sir. We've actually, throughout my career and other gang detectives prior to me with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office have interviewed people, and they have told us that they have showed us and told us what the 1200 gang sign is.
And what exactly is that?
It's where you take your ring finger and you touch your thumb, and it makes a 1 and 2 that stands for 12.
And are you saying that Mr. Devion Murphy made that symbol for you?
He did. He didn't make it for me. He made it in a room by himself.
Okay. May I have one moment, Judge?
Yes.
Thank you. Detective, are you aware of the relationship of Davion Murphy to Rashad Murphy?
Yes, I believe in his interview that he told us that they were cousins. They're legally cousins, but more like brothers.
Okay. All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Okay, redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Free to go.
Yes, thank you.
All right, state next witness.
State calls Detective Juan Ramos.
And until next time, this is OG Jucario TV with the latest in rap, hip-hop celebrity, and urban news. You're watching the Rundown Podcast. I appreciate everybody for spending with me. I appreciate all my subscribers for sliding with your boy every time. And say, man, hey, man, keep hitting that like button, keep hitting that subscribe button, and look, turn on post notification so we can slide whenever I get the drop. You already know what it is, man. It's deeper than Buddha, her, you hear me? And guess what? I'm gone.